Ah, all right. So good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam. We're learning Hilchos, Toyin, Venitan, the laws governing disputes between plaintiffs and defendants, chapters 10, 11, and 12. We are beginning with Perek Asiri. We're beginning with the 10th chapter. Even though we have a rule that when you have metaltalin, the one in possession is considered the muhzak, throwing the onus of proof on whoever wants to take it away from the muhzak. We're going to learn in this chapter the exceptions to the rule that there are metaltalin, yet still the one in possession is not considered the muhzak. Perek Asiri has 6 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Says that Rambam behema oichaya, a domesticated animal, a non-domesticated animal type, she'eino shemura, which means that the animal is not kept in a enclosed area. It's a roaming animal. That's the way we work with the animal. Since it is a living being that is constantly going from location to location, does not become in the chazaka of the one that is currently in possession of it. Once we know that it belonged to a prior owner, who cares if now it's in the hand of another? Maybe the animal on itself went to this other. That if the plaintiff will bring Adam, you have to bring Adam to Basin, that you owned it in the past. That it's known that this animal belonged to you. And the one who's currently in possession claims, yeah, I know it belonged to you, but you gave it to me. You sold it to me. He won't be believed. We learned, right, that if you are in possession, then the premise will be that it's yours, not over here. Because because this is a type of animal. Since this animal is not kept in an enclosed area, we say it went by itself and it went into the possession of the person who's claiming that he owns it currently. Therefore, if the current person doesn't have a proof that it was given to him, that it was sold to him, etc., the animal has to be given back to the person who has aided that it belonged to him. Eloma, the Yeshava Heses, one thing, the original owner has to reinforce his claim by taking a Shvuas Heses. In contrast, if and when it's usual for this animal to be kept in a enclosed area, and even when the animal goes out of a pen, of a corral, it goes under the care of a shepherd, doesn't roam freely. Here it's different. Even if someone brings a proof that he owned it, nevertheless, if it's currently in the hands of another, that other will be the muhzak. And therefore, if the person who's currently in possession says, you sold it to me, or you gave it to me, the Rambam flips the seder. There has to be a reason, right? Before we had the other way, the sata macharta, here it's macharta nasata. In any event, Yeshava hatoifas heses, here the opposite. The one who currently is in possession, like the normal case, you're keeping it, midrabanan, you take the shvuas heses that it indeed belongs to him, v'yipatet, and he won't have to give it back to the original owner. Halacha gimel, lefikach therefore, mi shetafas behemas chavere, shoysa shmura, oibeyad roya. The original owners claim the animal left by itself and it came to you. Or because I gave it myself to you for you to guard it for me, for you to be the custodian. I loaned it to you. And we're calling the guy in possession the toifus, the chaper, kenu, eino shali. It's true, it's not mine. But you have another outstanding debt with me. You gave it as a mashkin for another debt. Or this animal, or you damaged me, or you owe me money. So the vart is, since he would have been able to claim that it's his, as we learned in Halacha Beis, Now that he's making another claim, he has a migu. Any claim that has up until the value of this animal is something that he will have nemanus in. Since he could have said, so that is again, he has a migu. But there's one thing. When he taka claims, like in halacha base, you gave it to me, all he needs to do is to take a shvua assesses. Now that he's not saying lukucha biyadi, now that he's saying, look, this animal is taka yours, but you owe me its value, the yeshava benekitas chayfetz. Here again, it's a rabbinic oath, but he has to take an oath holding an holy article, and only then can he take it. And this was something that we learned, my friends, in Perek Yud Gimel of Malva and Loiva. Halacha dal. Slaves that can walk by themselves. Also, as we had on Halacha Aleph. Now, the original guy has to bring a proof that it certainly belonged to him. He's claiming it still does. And the current person in possession claims you sold it to me or you gave it to me, but he won't be believed. Again, because the Eved is a free roaming creature. And again, the Yeshava Hatoin Shalamacha V'Leinasa, that's the Shvua Sesses that we had at the end of Halacha Aleph. Now, if this defendant, right, the one that Tafasu Eved, the one that's currently in possession of the Eved, if he brings Edom, Sheyesh Lozeh HaEved Etzloi Shalosh Shanim Ritzufis Miyim Liyay, that this guy, this Eved, is already by me for 3 years. And during these 3 years, this guy is saying, I made use of him, and he has proof to that. Here, Beis Din will say that since the original owner did not make a protest for 3 years, now the current guy is Neman.
There's no contract?
Not a contract, no, it's mamish like the law of real estate that we will learn soon in the next chapter in Perek Yud Aleph, that if you are in possession of real estate for 3 years or more, the very fact that the original owner did not make a protest, you claim, I had a document that I bought it, but I don't have to hold my document forever. The fact that the owner allowed that to happen, that is the proof that we give the presumption that it belongs to the current here, the guy who's in possession of the Eved. That is only, all of this is above is when an Eved is an adult. Without the 3 years, you're not believed. Aval Eved cotton. But when you have a minor, a real minor, a minor meaning a 1-year-old, he cannot even stand on his own feet because of his young age. Now he has a din of all other metaltalim, meaning whoever's currently in possession, because, as we have been learning in the previous chapters, and we apply the rule that either he claims I know you have it in your hand, but you stole it from me, or I gave it to you for you to be a custodian, or I rented it to you, or I loaned it to you. And the guy who was in possession, the defendant, says, this was always mine. Now he says the words, this was my inheritance, which means he's implying that it always belonged to me. You're kidding, it belonged to my father. And now the plaintiff brings proof, and they testify that we know for sure that in the past, it did not belong to the guy that's claiming it was always his. So now that he has proof that a year ago it was not his, so now the defendant changes his claim. And he says, I know, I didn't mean that I got it via Yerusha. I know that it belonged to you, but you gave it to me, but you sold it to me. The reason why I said I have it via Yerusha, I didn't mean those words to be taken literally. All I meant is, it's so mine as if I inherited it. So here the Rambam says, we still believe it. And this is what we learned in the 7th chapter, that in such scenarios, a person cannot change their claim. But if a person explains that what they meant should not be taken literally, but what they explained could work, then we allow the person to interpret the original meaning of his words, and being that he has a chazaka, he's going to be neman. And the final halacha in this chapter, halacha vav, final article. Again, we're speaking about movable articles. Question is, who's in possession of it? Is it considered automatically in the hands of the person in possession? Svina, a boat or a ship. Two people are arguing over it. That what? That one asks the court, he tells the Beis Din, you Beis Din, being that me and him are arguing, why don't you take possession of it? He's asking that of the court. Tifsuha, take possession of it until I will bring Eidim that it belongs to me. Now, I want you to know that we're going to learn in the 15th chapter regarding the case of a boat. And this is something that when you hear it the first time, you say, whoa, but you get used to it. And there is a time where Beis Din says, Kol the Alim Gvar. Kol the Alim Gvar means, Beis Din says, we don't know who is right. Let the stronger man win. Now, it sounds like lawlessness. It's not so. There are certain scenarios in where halacha says that the guy that's in the right will put up a bigger fight. We're not speaking about physically, even though it could come to that, but we're speaking about civilized people. In other words, the boat is in the harbor. No one is in possession of it. No one is the muhsak. Each one is claiming that it's theirs. So the rule is called the alam gvar. This guy, one litigant, doesn't want called the alam gvar. He's asking Beis Din, why don't you take hold of it? And I will be in proof. We don't listen to him. But by the way, if Beis Din does take possession, things change. The imt of Suah Beis Din, if Beis Din, for whatever reason, maybe wrongfully, they didn't know the law, they seized it. And this guy that claimed that he has Eidim does not. And now he says, you know what? Okay, I thought I had Eidim. Depossess it, he tells the Beis Din. Leave it the way it used to be, which is the stronger one should take it, which was as the din should have been prior to Beis Din taking possession. Once Beis Din took possession, ain't shoym lamb. That's it. Now Beis Din, it remains in possession. The aim with sin oisi Beis Din metachas yadan. Now Beis Din has to deal with it. Beis Din cannot give it to either. See, it's a big difference. If you don't get involved, then you have the right to leave things the way it is. Once you stick your nose in, you can't just put it back to the way it was. Achi yavoyo edim. Beis Din has to stay, so to say. Beis Din becomes its custodians until either of the sides bring edim, or until one will admit to the other, or until they both come to an agreement. See, each one is claiming it's theirs, but none of them will have it. None of them. Who benefits from that? No one. So some rational people, even though that they're angry, they allow the reason to overcome their midah, and they say, you know what, let's divide it. No, they have to both already tell Beis Din we came to an understanding. That was the previous chapter, as we learned in Perek Tes. So that was concluding the din of metaltalin. Perek Achadosar, the 11th chapter, it begins to tell us the rules of real estate. Now, real estate, even the one who is currently on it is not considered to have a chazaka the way you have on metaltalin. You see, I have a watch. It's in my hand. I'm the muhzak. If you claim it's yours and I claim it's mine, I'm going to premise it's mine because it's mamash in my possession. Land, we can argue, we are all in the possession of the land. Like who owns who over here? The end of all people is to be buried in the land. What do I mean you're muhzak over? So but yet there is a concept of chazaka, and we just alluded to it in the previous chapter, and that will be the cheskas shaloshanim. Right, cheskas habatim. This is the 3rd chapter of Bava Basra. Perek Achadosar has 10 halachas, beginning with halacha. Says that Rambam kol akarkois hayidus lebalei. Because whenever there is landed property that we know that it used to belong to someone, even if the fact right now everyone knew it belonged to the Reuven, Food Shimon is in there, it remains halachically becheskas Reuven. Harein becheskas baleim. Ketzat, for example, Reuven shoyim mishtamish b'chatzon kederech shoam mishtamish b'chatzirem. How did we know that it belonged to Reuven? No one ever saw a document that Reuven bought it, but for many years, Reuven lived in that property. He did with the property only as an owner does, which means Darba, he both lived in it, he rented it out to others, and he built there, and he demolished there. You know, you drive by your house where you live. You see, how do you know the guy owns it? You see, after many years, he's not even behaving like a renter. He's behaving like an owner. And at some later time comes along Shimon, and Shimon says, "Listen, the land that you're living in, really, it belongs to me. I know that you're there. I rented it to you. I loaned it to you. You stole it." No, listen to this. If Reuven says, "Yeah, I agree that it used to be yours, but you sold it to me. Yeah, it used to be yours, Shimon, but you gave it to me as a gift." So like this. If we never know independently that it belonged to Shimon, that's very important. In other words, Reuven could have claimed it never belonged to you. That's called a migu. Even though Reuven is saying it used to belong to you, but you sold it to me. And they ask Reuven, "Where's your document?" He doesn't have it. Reuven is not even there for 3 years. It doesn't matter. Since it's not known to have belonged to Shimon, we believe Reuven. Yes, Shua Hesses. That's that was the first chapter in Tayin V'Nitin, and you always have to have a Shua Hesses. Nishbar Reuven Hesses. In contrast, maybe Shimon Edom. But if Shimon can bring Edom, that it indeed we know from those witnesses that it belonged to Shimon. Now, we do the opposite. We tell Reuven, you claim that he sold it to you. Bring a proof. Bring a proof that he gave it to you as a gift. And if Reuven, which is the example that Rambam gives, the current occupant doesn't have such a proof, Misalkin oiso mimenu. We remove Reuven from the land and we give it back to Shimon. Even if Reuven says even better, Reuven says it never belonged to you. Doesn't matter. Once we have Edom or any other type of halachic proof that it belonged to Shimon, so then Reuven, being there right now, behaving like a boss, does nothing. As we'll see, if he wasn't there for 3 years, that's the way that Rambam introduces this. That if it's independently known, in Beis Din, halachically known, that it used to belong to Shimon, these are the names here. The fact that Reuven is living in the land doesn't do anything for Reuven. We will take Reuven out of there. In other words, we tell Reuven, bring a raya or get out. That's only if he was not there for Zman Meruba, defined in a moment as in 3 years or more, maybe Edom. But if the current occupant, in our example, Reuven, will bring Edom, that he ate the produce of this land for 3 consecutive years. The word consecutive is essential, as we'll see soon. And then and he had the types of benefits, all of the benefits of the land, which is what an owner does from his or her land. Another layer, which is extremely important. It has to be in a scenario where, in our case, where Shimon would have known that Reuven is there. Because part of the proof will be the fact that Shimon did not protest is a raya that he acquiesces. He knows that now it belongs to Reuven, even though it used to belong to Shimon. Now that's only a proof if Shimon knew. In most cases, we claim that after 3 years, the owner finds out. There are exceptions, as we'll see soon. So then, Reuven gets to keep it. The Yeshava Reuven Hesses, Reuven Taket. Shimon has a raya that it used to belong to him. The current occupant cannot deny that fact. If he denies that fact, he's going to be kicked out. But the case here is that Reuven is saying, yes, it used to belong to you, Shimon, but you sold it to me. Where's your document? I don't have to keep my document forever. All he needs to do is he has to take a shvus esses, either Shimon, or that he was given that land as a gift via pater, but he gets to keep the land. Why? Because we halacha, we the Beis Din, we tell Shimon im emes atotoin. That what? That you never sold it to the current occupant. You never gave it to him as a gift. Why was that person year after year using your land? At least you should have had a document that you leased it to him for you to prove that it's still yours. Now, if Ton Va'amad, if the original owner, again, in our case, Shimon, says, yeah, I didn't protest because I never found out about it. I never knew about it because I was in a faraway country. So the general response is, even then, in the days of old, where communication was nothing as it is today, they tell him after 3 years, you would have found out. It's impossible that you would not have heard about it throughout 3 years. We know that you heard about it. And the moment you heard about it, what you should have done is you should have lodged a protest, a macha'a, in front of 2 Eidim. You should have notified me. All you needed to do was to go in front of 2 people to say that I heard that Reuven is on my land. Pliny, Reuven Gazaloisi. He's a ganef. And now you don't even have to right away lodge a complaint and base it. You just have to make a macha in front of Eidim, and you have to notify them that ulamachar in the future, not tomorrow, when it's convenient for me, the original owner, I'm going to take him to court. But he didn't do that. So we tell him, therefore, you caused yourself to lose. Now, all of that is because we're making a presumption that you would have found out. There are exceptions. One exception will be times of war. In times of war, people don't find out. Between 2 different countries, and you were in the other country, or the shibush derachim, sometimes there's disruptions in the travel routes. You know, the road that connects this country to that country collapsed. The bridge fell down. And these are extraordinary circumstances. There are times that we can say, the current occupied for 20 years. If Shimon has to say, I never knew. I did not know.
But the disruption of the route didn't go for 10 years. I mean, he still was there for 10 years. Yes.
Obviously, in this case, it must have been that it was disruption for 10 years or 20 years. Yeah, of course. No, it's good to see the way we word it. Even in the times of old, it's the normal is people find out. You can be in the Holy Land and the other guy can be in Asia, Far East. After 3 years, you find out. The guy has to, but there are exceptions. Now, halacha 3. Hevi Reuven Eidim. If Reuven brings Eidim, Shehoyo Shimon Ba B'chol Shana V'Shana. The Oimid B'Makim. Reuven is the current occupant. And Shimon was in a place where there war. But the current occupant brings proof that the owner came and he was in this place for 30 days. Not more, but for 30 days, obviously, or less. The words or less are almost superfluous. People question whether indeed it's in the text. Let's read the words. Point is not more than 30 days. So we tell Shimon, even though that you generally were living in that land that's at war, but since you were here, you should have made a protest. And therefore, you lost your merit. But if Shimon says, yeah, I traveled here. I came to my home country, but I wasn't here for more than 30 days. I was here for 30 days or less. And while I was here, I came here to do business. So it's amazing. We say, if Shimon says it, we believe him. It's possible for you to go back to your home country. If you're only there for 30 days and not more, then you have the right to say, I was here, I was completely overwhelmed with my work, without even finding out what's going on with his real estate. But the moment he's here, now always, says that Rambam, even this, it's when you are in a village is where people are completely occupied with the business spheres. There is where a person can claim within the 30 days. The Rambam holds that if you live in a city, more people, you would have bumped into someone that would have told you that someone is in your land, just so you don't know what happened, what's going on. Did you sell it? Did you not sell it? So the Rambam limits this. Halacha 4. Now, hold on, the current occupant, why don't we challenge the current occupant by telling him, if what you're saying is true, that Shimon had sold it to you or that Shimon had given to you as a gift, why don't you have the document? And the answer is, I know today the world is different. Everything is documented. Everything is in the cloud. They didn't have it then. A person bought something. They knew they have to hold on to the document, but they never needed to hold it on forever. There's many factors with the 3 years that all combine together. The fact that people normally don't hold on to a document for more than 3 years. The fact that a person within 3 years will find out. Altogether. The current occupant says, since no one made a protest, I no longer felt responsible to keep holding on to my document. Now, what were to happen, like we mentioned, if Shimon is in a faraway country, he doesn't have to go to a base in there. All he needs to do is he has to make a protest in front of two Eidim. But I have a kasha now. If he makes such a protest, what are we saying? We're saying that the current occupant is claiming, since no one made a protest, I felt at liberty not to watch my document. But how would he even know that? Even if he did make a protest, why can't the current occupant say, I never heard about it? Gewaldig. So the answer is, because had the original owner made a protest in front of two Eidim, the current occupant will find out, because of this expression of Chazal, that Chavra Islay, the Chavra, de Chavra Islay. Imagine, try to keep a secret. Nothing is a secret. If you uttered it, people find out. It's just a matter of time. You would have known. The Chazaka, we halachically say you would have found out. We know you found out. And once you know that he made a protest, if you indeed had a document and still you were not careful, you know what? Tough luck. You caused yourself to lose. Therefore, but if the protest that Shimon made was not a good protest, he told the witnesses, don't utter a word that I made a protest. Keep my protest a secret. That's not good. Even though many times they won't be able to keep a secret. But the goal of the protest is for the current occupant to, yes, find out about it. Now, if the Shimon did not tell them, be quiet, the Eidim themselves are saying, we're not going to share it with anyone. We don't believe them. If someone was not commanded to keep a secret, the person will minimally, let's say it unintentionally. People cannot keep a secret. People cannot keep secrets. Rabbi J.J. Hecht of blessed memory, has a very, from his many interactions with the Rebbe, so he was not known to be a person that can keep a secret. And the Rebbe at times would tell him in a jokingly way that you're known to be a balsoit, meaning, I know what I'm telling you, you won't be able to contain it. And that's the way it is. That's the way it should be. If a chassid hears something from the Rebbe, how can he keep it? Al toidiuhu. Oy sho'amru hema atzman ein adam odiyam oisai. Again, gamzu machai. And afapi she'ein moedian oisai. Yeah. In other words, if all the original owner instructed was, just don't tell Reuven. They didn't tell them, don't tell anyone. Okay, people have a hard time keeping a secret. So they're going to listen. They won't tell Reuven. So what? But they're going to tell someone else. And someone else will tell someone else. And Reuven will find out. So that's why it's called a macha. Because we believe that the Eidim kept their bargain of not telling the current occupant. But they were never told not to tell anyone. So therefore, yes, they'll tell other people. Now, halacha zayin, let's go into greater detail. What exactly is this macham? You have to say at least in front of two. Right, in our examples, Shimon is making the complaint or the protest by saying that Reuven, that's in my property, in my courtyard or in my land, gazlanu. And at some time when it will be convenient for me, not now, when I will want, I'm going to take him to a din. That's called a protest. A protest can also mean he's not a ganef. I want people to know that he's paying me rent. He doesn't own it. Or he taka loaned me money, acknowledge he did me a favor. I gave him that as a mashkin, but the land belongs to me. It's only under his care because now it's a mashkin. And part of his statement has to be, and if later the current occupant is going to lie and claim that I sold it, I will take him to a din Torah. That's called a protest. Again, like we mentioned, even though he doesn't need to make a protest in the current country, because Chavra, Islay, the Chavra, and Shimon will find out about it, and therefore Shimon will have to hold on to the document, and his lack of holding on to the document disempowers his chazakah. Just saying, that guy that's using my chatzit is a gazlan. That's not enough of a protest. You see, if I say, that guy is a gazlan and I will take him to a din to get my land back, that's called a protest. If I make a statement that Reuven is a gazlan, what does that mean? Nothing. It just means that I'm saying he's a gazlan. He stole other people's stuff. Because Reuven says, when I heard that Shimon, the original owner, said that I'm a gazlan, I didn't understand that he was claiming that the land that I have, I stole from him. I thought, he was just slandering me. He was calling me a gazlan. So that's why I didn't feel that he's going to ever threaten the ownership of the land, and therefore, rightfully so, I didn't have to watch over my document for more than 3 years. Another din, halacha 8. Macho b'fnei shnayim. In other words, keep on mentioning, macho does not need to be made in front of a beis din. Even in front of two, it is of consequence. And therefore, the koisvin, once such a protest was made, since that's a valid macho, they have the right to document it. Even if he did not make such a ask, unlike what we learned previously, right, by Malva and Loiva, clearly that unless the borrower agreed to having the loan documented, can't just write it down. Now, another rule. Once he made the protest during the first year, doesn't have to make a protest every one of the 3 years. He has to make sure that there is never a full 3 years without a protest. Really, he can make a protest once in 3 years. He makes it in the first year, then he makes it in the fourth year, you understand? So therefore, and indeed, but if he made a protest now, but he did allow for 3 full years to go by, and then the next day he made a macha, that macha is no longer of a consequence. You have to make sure within 3 years you make a macha. Halacha 9. If Reuven brings Edom, meaning Reuven is the current occupant, and Shimon is the guy that Taka has proof that it used to belong to him. Reuven is not denying it. Reuven is just saying, you sold it to me. Beis Din is telling Reuven, where's your document? He's saying, I didn't know that I have to keep my document. What happens if he brings proof that the original owner helped the occupant taking the produce off the land? Who does that? That's the biggest proof. You understand that Reuven sold it to Shimon or gave it to Shimon. Shazeh Shimon Balasada, the original Balasada. Kiboitz paid a Sadazu in a Sanam. He helped the current occupant Reuven harvest the produce and he gave it to Reuven. Now that is proof that Ataka belongs to Reuven. Tamen Asada B'Yad Reuven. And Vafilotan Sheshimon Mochanaloi on a Sanallah Hayoim. Even if Reuven's claim is not that I have it for more than 3 years, he sold it to me today. The very fact that the original owner helped him gather the produce is a raya that he bought it or he got it as a gift. Because had Reuven not given it or sold it to Shimon, he would not be in service of the current occupant by giving him the produce. You don't do that. Halacha Yud, the final halacha of this chapter. Ula peido soiradativ. Ushaloi hoya peides. Abol. Haguf loy mocharti. If the original owner says, yeah, I know you're telling me you have a proof that I helped him gather the produce. Yeah, you don't need proof. I 100%. Yeah, but that's because I only sold him the user fruit of this property. Shimon has to claim that. If Shimon makes that claim, then Shimon will be believed. And this is extremely important, how you don't make arguments for the litigants. In other words, you have to hear what they're saying. So normally, again, the fact that the original owner harvested it, was participating in its harvest for the current occupant, that gives a lot of credibility for the current occupant to claim, you sold it to me. But if the original owner says, no, I didn't sell you the land, I sold you the produce, I sold you the harvest, now the original owner will still be believed.
Why doesn't he take an oath in this case?
No oaths are needed. Let me just go back and retract what I said. Whichever person will be considered the muhzak will have to take a shvuas hesses. That was the first pedic in Hilchos Toim V'Nitim. Once halacha says Shimon is the muhzak, Reuven is saying it's mine. That's the rule. If I'm claiming that what you have belongs to me, the guy that keeps it has to take a shvuas hesses. In the case where Shimon has the 3 years, so Beis Din is going to pass and Shimon gets to keep it. Shimon is going to have to take a shvuas hesses. That's already established in the first chapter. Okay, Atkan, the introduction of the concept that land is different than metaltalin, that by metaltalin, whoever is in possession of it now is the muhsak. Land is a whole different ball game. But we explained in the Pedic 11th chapter that there is a concept that once you are in possession of it in 3 consecutive years, you now become the muhsak. The 12th chapter is going to give a lot more details into that. In other words, we keep on mentioning 3 consecutive years. That has to be unpackaged better. We're going to see that it really varies from one type of land to another type of land. Exactly what does 3 years mean? But the concept is already established. We're just going to go into how exactly do you make this chazaka of 3 years. The 12th chapter has 20 halachas. Let's begin with halacha al. Shaloi shanim sha'amru. When we spoke in the previous chapter that the current occupant has to actually be there using the land with all of the hana'ah for 3 years, first of all, it means miyoim liyoim, not Jewish calendar years, right? Today's Chavav Adar, Tavshin Pei Gimel. So we don't say that, hey guys, in 7 months, not in less than a month is Pesach. In less than 7 months is Rosh Hashanah. Now, Rosh Hashanah is Tavshin Pei Dalet. We don't say that that's the second year. No, it's from mamish, from day to day. First, it has to be consecutive years. And imagine if the current occupant was there for almost 3 years, only missing 1 day. We're going to give it back to the original owner, to the one that we know owned it previously. That taki, you need to have 3 consecutive full years from day to day. That's only, this is very important, on types of land, shehein, oisim, pedis, tamid, that they are constantly producing. Now, when we're speaking about producing, we don't mean only producing produce. We can mean producing income, like a home. People live in a house 24/7. Or, you live it, you rent it out, courtyards, any types of water reservoirs. They're constantly being used. Doesn't mean use that you're taking water from it, but you are you're using it for storage. Or if you have, let's go to stores. But we're going to come back to stores. We're going to come back to stores in a moment. There's going to be a nuance about the stores. And inns, and bathhouses, and chicken coops, and olive preps. Stei hashalachin means fields that are only watered by rain. The rain, natural water, is enough to have that field constantly produce. Shemashkin oisam tamid. And the Zoidenba, and those lands are used, right, not only at a specific time in the year. I take it back. Beis HaShlachim are, I think are fields that are constantly irrigated, right, and therefore they're constantly used. So you plant there, and you have gardens there, and you have orchards there. In other words, any item that is constantly in use, there is where you need to have 3 years from day to day. Or even Avadim HaMahalchim. We're saying Avadim HaMahalchim, we learned as in Pedek Yud, Avadim is not like metaltalin. right? Avadim is not like metaltalin, and as long as they can walk on their own, just the muhzik himself is not considered the owner unless he has 3 years. When do people make use of an eved? Every day. As we learned in chapter 10. But in contrast, stay abal, I'm sorry, fields that are only they only live off rainwater. Now, rain, it doesn't always rain. So if a field is not being irrigated continuously, Sholachan is throwing water, those fields are only used during the season. Now, if they're only used during a season, why would you need to have 3 consecutive years? You just need 3 seasons. You only need 3 seasons. It can be less. Or bachlal, stay ha'ilan. That's the rule. No, trees, they only give a produce a certain time in the year. They're not used. They're not giving fruit the whole time. Less is needed. You need 3. 3 would mean ella kiven she'achal shalish tvois min echad. As long as you have 3 harvests from one type of produce, you can't mix types. Then that is like 3 full years. So you have to have the same type, 3 apples, 3 seasons of apples. And he gives an example. You have a date orchard, a date grove. And the Gadar Shalosh Gedatis, and you, the current occupant, harvested dates for 3 times. We're not speaking about countries that produce twice a year, once a year. But understand, once a year could mean that it's not full years, because it could be that you, the current occupant, only got there right before the harvest. It's going to be less than full 3 years. Or whatever. Stay on Novim, if you have a grape vineyard, ubatzad in the Holy Tongue, harvesting, in English is always harvesting. In the Holy Tongue, if you're harvesting dates, it's called gedeiros. If you have grapes, it's called betziros. If you have zaysim, it's called mesikois, umasak shalosh mesikois. In all of these cases, that's enough. Harei elu k'shaloshanim and v'hechzik. V'afilo hoyo lanis l'tufim v'lo hoyo b'neim herchei karoi. If you planted a lot of trees one near the other, and that's not good for the tree, because trees need space like people. And if you don't, at some point, uproot and replant them, one tree will eat up the nourishment of the other and they will dry out. We say still, the fact that they were here for 3 years, not even full 3 years, that they produced 3 harvests once a year, whoever was the one that ate, that harvested, that used, he has the right to claim, I bought it. Indeed, hersik halacha base. Now, hevi edim shoyadar b'chatzer zu shaloshanim. Oish iskira shaloshanim. Now let's go into more details. Again, we also just had this in the previous chapter that Beis Din doesn't push claims. Beis Din listens to the claim that is being made. If the current occupant, I'm just going to use the names that the Rambam used in the previous chapter, that Shimon was the original owner. That was the example that Rambam gave. And Reuven is the current owner. Reuven is the current occupant. Reuven is claiming, let's say, that this courtyard, I was here for 3 years. He brings Adam. Beis Din doesn't push further. The fact that the current occupant, Shimon, has Adam, Reuven, that Rambam Zajac Reuven, that I was here for 3 years, Beis Din now would give the ruling, okay, we presume it belongs to Reuven. But now, if the original owner of Shimon claims, hold on, the Adam, I have to hear more. Maybe you did not live there both by day and by night. Maybe they only brought Adam, you were there during the day. It's amazing. No, any property that you make use of it day and night, if you're being asked, you have to actually have the Adam say you were there day and night. Because something that's used day and night and the current occupant did not use it day and night, the original owner can always claim, I did not protest. I'll tell you why. Because the guy wasn't even fully using it. I didn't feel the need to protest. Or let me go back to my names. The original owner was Shimon. The current guy claiming ownership is Reuven. What happens if Reuven himself did not live there? Reuven rented it out to Chaim Yankel. And Chaim Yankel paid rent to Reuven. And that's also Reuven's proof. You see, I behaved like an owner. I rented it. I got the weird, why didn't you not protest? So if the original owner says, 1 second, you did not rent it out to people that lived there day or night. You only lived there, maybe they only lived there during the day. If the original owner makes such a taina, that taina has power. And now Beis Din is going to come back to the current occupant and our mashal to the oven, and they're going to tell him, okay, your Edom was not good enough. Either bring Edom that you attack it there by day and night, or get out. And furthermore, even if the current people that are living there, Chaim Yankel comes, and it wasn't Chaim Yankel, it was Chaim and Yankel, right? They're like two Edom. They're not believed. They're Negei B'Davar. They're Negei B'Davar because who did they pay rent to? They paid rent to the oven. Now that someone else is claiming it never belonged to the oven, what were to happen if Beis Din would say it belongs to Shimon? Chaim and Yankel are in trouble because they paid rent to the wrong guy. So they're no longer believed. They cannot be the witnesses. Even if they say, Lanu Sachar, to us, Reuven rented it, we were the ones that lived, and we are testifying that we were there by day and by night. But if the original owner, if the original owner is quiet, that would be good. But if he pushes back and he says, no, I don't believe you. You have to bring Edom to that. Why are they not Edom? Like we mentioned, that's called when you are Negei B'Davar. And they're Negei B'Davar because if Reuven is not the owner, then they are in the loop. They have to now pay rent again to the real owner and get their rent back. And they don't want to do that. You have to have independent Edom. Now, without that ask, Beis Din doesn't say day and night, but the original owner can push that.
How could someone bring witnesses that they were there for 3 years, day and night? I mean, this is not something that's in the realm of reality.
That's not so not true, Kevin. If I know, that's the whole challenge. When you travel, what's the fear? When people know when I'm home in my house, they know the lights are on, the lights are off. You can tell. You can tell when a house, I know that, is occupied by day and by night. What do they call it? People that, I forgot there's English people that before they steal, they go around the neighborhood to check out. They you know when people are home, you know when people
right.
It's not true. Halacha Gimel. Now, if either the guy, let's go to the names of the previous chapter, the Reuven, who's claiming I was here for 3 years, or the Edom to whom Reuven rented it out to, if they are themselves Roichlin means that they make a living by traveling from village to village to sell schoirim, clientential. So then Beis Din makes the claim on the behalf of the owner. In other words, if the current occupant has a livelihood, which we know he was normally not there the whole time. We don't wait for the original owner to push. Maybe you were not there day and night. Beis Din says, you got to bring a proof you were here day and night. I know that you weren't, that your wife. And only that what? And that either if the original owner makes the claim, or in the last case with Beis Din, that the current occupant has to prove day and night. That's only if they are now disputing a courtyard, they are disputing a house. What's the magic of these two? Courtyards and houses are used by day and by night. But I know we mentioned stores and halacha aleph. Now we'll go back to it. But if the machlokes is about chanuya shel taganim, stores operated by merchants, that's another good liner. I know that in Brazil, I think he also in Boyle Heights. I think when Yidden came from the old country here, in the beginning, when people had a hard time making a living to establish themselves, people had a property. During the day, it was the store, and at night they lived there. I know the whole Brazil was built up that way. Then when people became wealthier, then, they kept the stores in downtown and they moved into the nice suburbs, thank God. In other words, Chanuya Shel Tagara means real estate, like in Beverly Hills. No one is allowed to live there. If they are having a machlokes about a store that's only operated during the day, the current occupant doesn't have to be there day and night. It's not used day and night. That's enough. If he has proof that he lived there only during the day, it is a chazak. Clear. Halacha dal. The 3 years have to again be consecutive. Let's speak out what does that mean? What won't be good? That a person that we're speaking about a field that's normally used, right, to plant, to harvest, and he has proof that 1 year, year number one, whenever that a couple of years ago he planted it, the next year he left it fallow. By the way, many people, we'll see in a moment, do that. We'll see in the next clause. Many people know that if you let the land rest, it actually produces so much more in the next year. It's even better that way, right? Like a person, sometimes you overwork, you end up producing less. So, but not in such a case. In a case where everyone plants every year. So if he only has Adam 1 year planted, 1 year fallow, uzra yashana, avir yashana. Now, this guy, the current occupant, is bringing proof that he's there like this for 10 years, which means he has 3 years, more than 3 years, that he planted it. It's still not going to be good enough, because the very fact that the original owner knew that whoever is squatting his land is not there consecutively was not mechuyev to make a machor. But that's only if the norm is not to leave the field fallow. Ooh, then you got a problem. Even if it's not everyone, even if some people plant year after year, it's only some people. That's and the current occupant has proof that he was now the 3 years that he has to bring a proof for Kavan is not 3 years including the year fallow. It has to be 3 years of planting, but it can only be for 5 years. You don't even need 6 years. Because if I prove that 5 years ago, year number one, I planted, year number two doesn't count, but then year number three, I planted, that's 2, 4 fallow, and now 5. That's going to be enough. He didn't leave it fallow. I left it fallow because, like we mentioned, because it grows a lot better in the following year. So in such a case, if he has Adam that he was there for a total of 5 years, with 3 harvests, that will be a proper chazaka. Halacha 5, shnei shutfim, shechziku besada sheishanim. Now what happens if you have 2 partners? They were there for 6 years. They planted it every year. But the nature of the partnership was that 1 year, one partner took ownership of it, took the benefits, and the next year the other partner, and they alternated. That means each one themselves have 3 years. Together they have 6 years. Still not good. Says that Rambam also because as the owner of the land says, since I never found, I knew what's happening, but I knew the emes that there isn't one person that's there year after year. That's why I didn't make a protest, and that's a good claim. Lefika, but im kosvu elo hashutim shtar b'neim sheyishtamshu b'shana shana. But if their partnership was documented, people know about documents. Kibush avro shalosh shanim. If only 3 years passed, not 6 years, only 3. Osalam chazak, because when you make a document, that already has a coil. So again, we presume the original owner found out about it, and here we go back. Similarly, like we learned in Eved, again, Pedek Yud, from the exceptions, doesn't have a din of metaltalin because the Eved, walks around on his own. Has a din of karka. But here also, that if Sheikh Sika Boy Shnayim, if 2 people took ownership of an Eved, and then shana, each one used it on a different year, they alternated. If there is no document, I don't care if they did that for 100 years. No one has a chazaka because no one was there for 3 years straight. But so again, we presume that the document, the content became known. Then now what happens, guys, if you have a total of 3 years, but it was never under the ownership of one person? Using the names of chapter 11, the original owner is Shimon. But what happened here is not that Reuven was there for 3 consecutive years. Reuven was there for 1 year, but he sold it. He sold it to Chaim. Chaim was there in Yom Kippur, and he sold it to Yankov. So here we also say that since documents create knowledge, they have a coil. That means the original owner knew It wasn't only that Reuven, Chaim, and Yankel was there. He knows that Chaim was there because he bought it from Reuven. He knew that Yankel was there because he bought it. You understand? It means he understood that they're making a chazaka. He should have protested. But if they sold it without a document, then ain't a chazaka. It's all the same idea that we have in halacha hey. And now let's go further. What happens, father son? Halacha zayin. And then the father passed away. Just add those words. And now the son is there for 2 years. Here it's not a sale for which, if there's no document, you wouldn't have found out. A son takes over the estate of the father, or the father for 2 and the son 1. Or, listen to this, father 1 year, the son another year, and then the son sold it with a document to another person. They also combine. As long as the sale was not destroyed. Now, let's go a little bit different. Not that the current occupant were combining father and son. Now we were saying that the original owner, let's go back to Perek Yud Aleph, is a Jew by the name of Shimon. But during the time that Reuven was there, Shimon passed away. So now Shimon's son owns whatever his father owned. He yarshened everything. But the current occupant was not there for 3 years when the original owner was alive. And it doesn't matter which way you divide the numbers. Or even more. Wow. Now we have to define when someone bought it. I want you to know like this, that if I own a field, let's say you're living there. So we're saying that I have to make a protest. I want you to know that if I sell that field, there is no greater protest than me selling it. When I make a document selling it, what am I saying? It's mine to sell. So the Rambam has to add a nuance that if the son sold it to someone else, it was not a sale of that land. That's a machar. There's another type of sale. I can make a document and writing that everything that I own is sold to you without specifying all of my lands. That's why this document is not a machar. That's a big rule. Also means selling it. And therefore, the current occupant should have kept the shtar. He is not keeping the shtar. This empowers him. Halacha 9. Now, I know we used the word before of hoivira, of leaving a field fallow. We're having another expression called nara. Nara shana chashana, of the current occupant, b'chlal, he left it fallow. He did not plant it year after year. Afilo kamashonim. So that's it. Or if he irrigated, if he brought irrigation into the field, all he did is that he brought water in there. He broke the clumps of earth. That means he made the land ready for planting. But if he didn't actually plant it, that's not called a chazak. Very important. Because you have to actually have hana'ah from the land for the original owner, who's claiming he's still the owner, for him to be irritated. Ooh, you're stealing my land. It's not yours. I'm going to take you to a din Torah. What happens if the guy taka planted, but no benefit came from it? For example, it was, he put a koir of seeds in the ground, and all that grew was one koir. That's not called hana. And again, the original owner didn't even get irked to make a protest because the guy, didn't do anything. His non-protesting doesn't do anything. What happens if he planted the land with straw? Now, normally land is used to plant things of greater value. So if the current occupant, not that he didn't use it, he used it for something minimal. That's also not a chazaka, only if you're living in a place where people plant straw. Yes, because in your place straw is very expensive or whatever. Another interesting halacha yud beis. What happens if the current occupant was there, and he did things that halachically are prohibited? He ate arla or shmita, God forbid, or kalayim, even though he had hana b'aveda, still it's a chazaka. It's enough to have. This should have provoked the original owner to make a macha. What happens if the land is stony? There's a stone there, a chalamish, another type of stone. It's rocky. And by the way, the original owner also was unable to plant there. And Rambam is saying that not every field has to be used for planting. If you have a rocky, sometimes people use land simply to use it as an area to spread out your produce that you want to dry, whatever it's used for. And tzarech le'yanis b'davar harei eloi, kigoy sheyish hach boy haperes, or to use it as a place where you put your animals. And here again, ve'im loy nehena boy koloi samashol l'shanim b'davar harei eloi, then lo yachzik. What happens if, let's say, me or you have houses and we have a courtyard that we share, and I use a specific part of the courtyard, which is in your half, to keep my animal, or in your half of the courtyard, I'm raising chickens, or I put my oven, my range, my stovetop, or I put my manure, whether I made a mechitza or not. After I'm using a place that was otherwise known to be your half, but I used it consecutively, you gave me permission, that's also a chazak.
3 years though, right?
3 years. So when you have a neighbor and you're being nice, you have to make a macha. You have to be careful. If you're not going to make a macha, you're going to lose the rights. Happens so often. The property lines, or a guy that built something illegally into your property. I'm not saying that you have to tell the guy to take it down, but you got to make a macha. You got to tell him, listen here, I'm not going to make a thing about it right now, but that land is mine. Halacha tezvav. Halacha shehi mukefes gadol. A field is surrounded with a fence. And the current guy did not even plant within the fence. He only planted outside the fence, which is also belonging to Shimon, but only outside the fence. And he had benefit from all of the areas outside the fence. Even though he had benefit there year after year, he has no chazaka, because the original owner say, I didn't feel a need to make a macha. This guy planted it in the unprotected part. I said to myself, whatever he'll plant anyways, he won't benefit from. The animals will eat up. And that's why I felt no need to make a macha. No need to make a macha. If the current occupant, right, he left one area that is halachically of significance, and that will be an area in which you can plant a quarter of a cob of grain. And that is what he left fallow. He was machzik and all of the rest. Even if that place that he did not use at all was a rocky location, that area he has no chazak on. Now, in other words, let's go in. The Rambam is implying something. I don't have to make use of every square foot, every square inch. But a place of a base roiva, that's already significant. Halacha Yud Zayin. Hechzig echad ve'ilonis. Now listen to this. Let's go back to the names of the previous chapter. Shimon is known with proof to be the original owner. Now, two people are there, not Reuven. Reuven and Levi. One of them made a chazaka in the trees, meaning he ate the peanuts. The other one made a chazaka in the land, and he planted the land, and he had the produce. Now you have three people fighting over the land. The original owner, the one that made a chazaka on the Ilon, is the one that made a chazaka on the karka. You know what he gets? He only gets the trees and the land that's needed for the Ilonis. We already had this not that long ago. We're not only speaking about the land directly underneath it, but we are also speaking about when you harvest trees, you have to have enough space to gather it by holding a basket. And has the rest of the karka. Wow. Let's go to the lachatchila. There's the original owner, current guy who ate the fruits of the trees for 3 years. And the ton balo ilan, he's claiming the trees and he's claiming the land underneath it. Yes. You know what that means? It means, if you remember, when there's a concept of me only buying your tree. But if I don't buy the land underneath it, then if this tree dries out, I have no rights to replant another one in its place. Me owning the tree and the land means that after this tree, if this tree dies, I can replant, which is what this guy will have a right to. Halacha 19. Stay ilan. If you have an orchard, you have 30 trees that are spread out in this amount of space, and only 10 in 1 year, only 10 in the second year, only the other 10 in the third year. Sometimes we're gonna clarify this in a moment. We're gonna limit this in a moment. Hechzik bakoil, you own all of it. You own all of it. It's only if they are all spread out. And another detail, you only ate 10 because the other trees had no produce. But and you only harvested 10, even though that over 3 years you ended up using fruits from all of them. But 1 year for 10, another year for the other 10, then lo yehechzik elo b'masha achal. And again, you need to have 3 years for that. Now hold on, that if you did not eat all of the fruits, you don't have a chazak in everything. That's only b'sha'achal who mixes haperos. If you ate some of it and other people, even people off the street, took the other fruits. But if they were not accessible to anyone else, that's important. You were the only eater here. Like we said, they're not in different sections. All of these 30 are spread out all over the place. Then, even though you only ate 10 each year, but no one else had access to any of the others. So yes, never to be continued.
Thank you, Rabbi.
We'll just say the Seder will be again that tomorrow we're going to continue where we left off. Tomorrow we're going to learn